Yo, what's good, guys? Today is going to be kind of a mirror of my how to pitch like a World Series player video. This will be how to hit like a World Series player. You, I see a lot of newer players or hard stuck players around that 700 rating that they would like to make World Series, and this is just some things that you can do that maybe you haven't thought about before, or just something that is kind of required to make World Series. You kind of have to be able to do some of these things, and I just figured I would shed some light on that and help you guys out with that. Some credentials, you can see I hit 1,000 last season, uh, 33-0 and ranked right now. Have not made the climb back to World Series, but that's where we're at. If you want to see my old top 50 banner, that was in the previous hitting video. But for now, we're just going to hop in to some custom practice. I'm going to go over some of the main tips that I have for you guys on that climb from roughly about 700 rating to 900 to World Series. Um, this can be applied at other ratings, but this is mainly stuff that I see players around that 700, 800 rating kind of struggle with, and some things that maybe they're not thinking about, right? So Framber's not really that guy, but one thing I would encourage is if you have not seen a pitcher previously, uh, don't be afraid to take a pitch or two, right? If your opponent is, bringing somebody weird out the bullpen or just a normal pitcher that you haven't seen all year, don't be afraid to take some pitches. Pick up on his release point, pick up on the pitches that he throws. It's really important to not just be first pitch swinging on a brand new reliever that your opponent brings into the game. Unless you have a lot of reps against him, you should not be that comfortable. You should not be first pitch swinging. So kind of going with that is finding the release point, right? I like to do this with pretty funky like sidearm deliveries, like Randy Johnson and Josh Hader is another one that comes to mind. Pretty much what I do is I'm sitting here pre-pitch, and then I'm watching where the ball comes from, right? And then I'm going to put my PCI there pre-pitch. It came from about right there, I would say, and we're just gonna watch it, right? We're just gonna see where the ball comes from and pick it up better out the hand, right? So obviously you don't want to do that every time. You don't want to watch it. Just kind of put your PCI there, know where it's coming from, and then you can pick up on it better out of his hand. And I really like to do that against, guys with weird arm slots like Adam Simber, Max Scherzer, Randy Johnson, Josh Hader, people with low three quarters or sidearm or even, submarine. It can help you kind of pick up on where the ball is coming from a little more. Because I feel like subconsciously, when you see a weird arm slot, it's not really something that you're thinking about. Tip number two, I would say, we can lump those last two together, is be early, right? I preach this in all my other videos. You're usually going to pull the ball for more power than you push the ball. Earlier side of good is always going to pretty much result in a higher exit velo than later side of good would. So just try to prioritize being early and really getting out in front. And kind of going with that last one, I said tip number three, don't be in no man's land. I'm sure we've all done it. You can see Framber does not have huge speed differentials here, but some of the guys online, like Tom Seaver and Pedro, have massive, speed differentials. And if you're sitting on the 90-mile-an-hour slider and Pedro's throwing you 103-mile-an-hour fastball and 78-mile-an-hour changeups, you're going to look quite stupid most of the time. So try not to be in no man's land. Try to be on one or the other. Be like, I'm going to really hit the off speed when he throws it, or I'm really going to hit the fastball when he throws it. Don't be in no man's land. Don't be sitting on weird pitches. Most people aren't going to sit here and throw a million sliders to you. They're going to throw either a million fastballs or a million changeups or a split of both. Don't be sitting on, a 90-mile-an-hour slider. That just tells me that you're in no man's land and you can't really find your timing, and maybe you got lucky and ran into a slider. So going with that, right? Take away your opponent's best pitch. The easiest way to lose in at bat is let your opponent dictate the at bat. What pitch is going to get thrown when? and you just play right into their hand. Have a conscious notion of what that pitcher's best pitch is when he comes up, right? So if it's Randy Johnson, obviously his best pitch is going to be his outlier four seam. If it's Bob Gibson, his best pitch is going to be that outlier four seam and that changeup. They're both pretty deadly. If it's somebody like Chapman, I'm looking for the slider with Chapman. Slider, splitter. Those two pitches play off his four seam so well. It's hard for those pitches to not be pretty dominant. If it's Gagne, right, you know what Gagne's going to throw when he comes in the game. He's going to throw that outlier four seam and that slow changeup or slow curveball. And just guys like that, right? Take notes on what their best pitch slash best two pitches are. Know what your opponent wants to throw you and kind of make your opponent adjust to you, right? Pitching is all about being in control. It's about controlling the at bat. It's about imposing your will on a batter and making him react to how you're pitching and then reacting ahead of time to fool that batter. So if you can take away your opponent's best pitch and not let him do what he wants to do that at bat, it puts him in a weird spot, right? You foul off pitches, you hit pitches hard that he didn't think you would hit hard. It changes the way an at bat works. It changes the pitcher's mindset. He eventually gives up. He's like, I don't know what to throw him right here. I'm just gonna pick a pitch and throw it. Usually that's when you can do damage. So again, try to take away that best pitch. Try to take away that second best pitch. Know what your opponent wants to throw during an at bat, and try to take away those pitches. Tip number, 4 or 5, whatever you want to call it at this point, is it's not always your PCI, right? People love to obsess over where their PCI is on a pitch. And for the most part, if you have good timing, that's typically right. But in general, I find that the way I try to hit baseballs is if I'm early, I'll be undershooting the pitch, right? So you can see right there, I'm very early, and you can see my PCI is above the ball. But let's kind of like extrapolate, right? Let's guess, right? Let's say that I had good timing or I had just early timing. You can kind of figure in your brain that my PCI would have drifted further down and it would have been close to a perfect, if not a good fly ball in the left field. So that's kind of what I'm preaching here, right? Don't just obsess over your PCI. Sometimes it makes sense, right? Sometimes you just got fooled, and if it was the pitch that you thought it was, where it was, you would have crushed it, right? So kind of use that mindset. Sometimes if you're early, you will have just not quite gotten to it. And sometimes if you're late, that's when you overshoot your PCI. That's when you feel like you're slamming. You're not always slamming. You're just not swinging with good timing. So if you can correct your timing, a lot of times I find that PCI will figure itself out, right? Your brain kind of subconsciously knows where it needs to put the PCI, especially if you have a lot of reps, and really it's just your timing that's messed up. So if you can just find your timing, a lot of times the PCI will figure itself out. If you consistently have good timing and you still have bad, way off PCIs, then it might be time to kind of reevaluate and rethink how you're hitting. But in general, I find if you can just get your timing right, a lot of times the PCI will be in the area of the ball that you think it should be. Don't overreact to where your PCI is, especially if your timing's off. Those typically go together. And then my final tip I will give is it's about reps, right? If you guys have stopped in the stream at all, you might have seen me playing events. I've been playing so many event games recently. It's hard to stay super focused during all of them. And you might have tuned in and seen me just 12 to 1, 12 to 2ing a kid, just completely on autopilot, right? And that's reps. That's reps. That's where reps take over. I don't have to focus so much, right? I've seen pretty much every pitch sequence somebody can throw me, every pitch that they can throw me, every pitching tunnel that they can throw at me. And at some point, it just gets predictable, and my subconscious just kind of takes over. and hits the ball for me, right? And so when you get enough reps to where your subconscious can pick up on stuff and you can really focus and you can kind of, marry those two together, that's when you're really going to take your game to the next level. And so you really need those reps. And they can be any reps, right? They can be reps on veteran difficulty against the CPU and Conquest. They can be, event reps on All Star. They can be ranked games rated under 400 where you're mercying a kid, or it might be the ugliest game that's ever been played, right? Those reps are still going to help you. Just seeing different pitches, having bad PCIs, having bad timings, it all helps. It helps build a foundation that you can kind of build off of. And yeah, I think that's it. Those are my tips for making it past 700, trying to make that push into World Series, trying to hit like a World Series player. And if this was at all helpful for you guys, feel free to like and subscribe. Peace.